You're listening to the Ballet Piano Podcast, lifting the lid on dance accompaniment.
Hello, podcast fans. Welcome to another episode of the Ballet Piano Podcast. We are still coming to you from our social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet. So keep hanging in there, stay positive and productive. And if you're stuck for something to do, why don't you download all of our previous episodes and listen from the start? Or go to our website and buy yourself some merchandise. Isn't that a good idea?
It's a fabulous idea, Matt.
But anyway, back to business. I'm Matt Gregory, and on Zoom with me is the amazing podcast team. Chris Hobson.
Hi, Matt.
Akiko Hobson.
Hello.
And hashtag David Yao of Instagram.
Hi, Matt.
So we have reached the final part of the ballet class. And today we're talking about virtuosity, which is the really fun part. And if you're not familiar with what virtuosity is, I think I know a man that can explain exactly what it means. Hi, David. It's over to you.
Oh, dear.
So
no pressure then.
So what's virtuosity?
Virtuosity is, it's the showing off things. You know, when you're showing off your technique, you know, in a pianist, how fast you can play something, how bright you can do it, those kind of things. So I guess it's like the icing or the cherry on the cake, shall we say, really. And there are a number of ways to do that in ballet. We can turn, so we're not leaving the floor, but we can maybe do a very brilliant turn, so like a multiple turn. It just keeps going and going and going. That's very impressive. Anything that's impressive, really. A series of turns that go from one position into another position, or they turn from one leg onto another leg. And of course, when we're getting into like a series of things, now that's another thing. So you can do like a singular step, like a turn, or a jump that's impressive, or you can do a series of things that are jumps that are impressive. And they can be either sur place, remember what that meant, on the spot, or they can be around the room, or tour de la salle, on a diagonal, on diagonal, or they can be around the room. It could be a manège.
So is this is typically at the end of the class, isn't it? After Grand Allegro, typically.
Absolutely.
This is the fun bit, isn't it?
This is the fun bit where you just let rip. Really, it's just you're just gonna show off, and so. At the end of the class, when you've done all your technique things and you've got all that out the way, then everybody has a bit of fun, and you start showing off your turns, or your jumps, or your turning jumps, really. So let's say, how many turns can the boys do or the girls do? It's amazing, actually. I've seen on YouTube these days. It doesn't make any difference whether you're a lady or a gentleman these days. There are some amazing turners in the world, I have to say. It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are the famous turns.
I feel like we're in that age now.
We are. Everything's become so athletic now. So it is breathtaking, though, I have to say.
Yeah.
Famous turns are like, let's say, the 32 fouettes in Act 3 of Swan Lake that Odile does. Famous piece of music. Or turns in second for the gentlemen that they might do in Le Corsaire or Don Q. Or let's say jumping things. A singular step might be a big jump that we've done in class, but we just really, really show off. Like we split the legs as far as they can go in the air. Or we turn as much as we can, or we jump as high as we can.
Would you say that this is the coda, essentially, of a ballet?
Yes, it would.
Is this where all the tricks happen? This is the bright two, isn't it?
Yes,
it's usually at the end of all the solos and stuff.
Always. Yes, always.
Yeah. And so the teacher in class, well, you're David, you are the teacher.
David, you've been teaching us everything for a long time. You're responsible for all my knowledge.
I know. For 17 episodes, you've been teaching us, David.
You guys have done the same thing for me as well.
David, I now know what surplus means. I've never known what surplus means, and now thanks to you, I do.
And we also know what lame duck is now.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
I always think of the virtuosity step at the section at the end of class when we finish quite late. It's a little bit like the encore, isn't it? You know, if you've been to a gig to see your favourite favorite band or something like that, and then they come back out and they play those last couple of greatest hits. It's like, come on.
This is my trick and I'm going to show off. Yes.
This is my trick and I'm going to do it for as long as I can.
A virtuoso sequence of steps, when you just repeat, it's all about the position and the speed perhaps of something, and just being able to repeat it again and again. That's what's impressive. It's just like, when you're using your fingers very fast going up and down the scales. That's really impressive. It's the same kind of thing, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
This coda music that is played at the end of class, this really bright too, this is where all the dancers just sort of find a space in the center and pile in, and this is where they fit their virtuosic steps into that music. So the ladies, do their fouettes, and the men do their turns in second, and then if they find the space in a circle, they can fit a menage in, and all sorts of things, and then onto chassisses. And they all fit it into that lovely bright do, which we know in ballet as the coda.
It's such fun when it happens. And you can feel the energy in the room just left off. And I think on the piano, it's brilliant.
What's that like when you were actually a dancer and you're surrounded by all that talent and all the dancers doing their tricks?
It's really exciting. It kind of eggs you on. It's like a competition, you're trying to show off and, show what you've been doing and what you're capable of doing. So at the piano, what's it like? What is it like when you're, because it goes on for a long time, doesn't it? Because there's loads of people, and because the virtuoso steps, you can't all do them all at once sometimes. So you have to keep going. What's that like?
That's the best. I love it. I love playing for the coda. And sometimes the teachers at company just squeeze it into the last 2 minutes, but it needs about 5 minutes because the men want to keep jumping and turning, and even when class is over, they keep practicing their virtuosic stuff. And I wish the coda bit was a bit longer.
It's just that it just takes so long to get to that stage because you can't do the coda until you've done everything else that comes before.
Of course, yeah.
So you've got to warm the body up, like an engine of a car. You've got to warm it up properly so that by the time it goes into race mode, it's okay. Everything's firing at the right speed, and you're not going to hurt yourself. So I guess it would be like trying to do a whole series of scales and things when your fingers are absolutely freezing cold.
Yeah. You've not done the warm up. You've not prepared for it properly.
Yeah. It's the same sort of thing. So not that you couldn't do it, but you probably hurt yourself. Do yourself a mischief.
So, kids, what about music? We've just said it's a really nice bright two. It's your umcha, isn't it? Your nice bright twos.
Yeah.
For music. What do we like playing for it?
For me, I go possibly more than two camps, but in my head, it's two camps. It's codas from classical ballets or everything else. And everything else, then includes.
What do you mean by everything else?
Everything else, stuff from musical theatre.
Right, yeah.
I thought you were going to say "We Will Survive."
"We Will Survive" is in there as, and anything else, everything else, I class it as. And I have two categories in my head for that. And I think I tend to start off with something quite traditional usually. Yeah, it'll be a bit of coda for classical ballet. If the company's not performing Swan Lake, and or if we're in school, and that tends to be as bog standard go-to, the big G major. Dun, 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 dun. But from there you can go absolutely anywhere, can't you?
Yeah. I always start off with I always play a little Stars and Stripes medley. The Balanchine ballet.
Yes.
Those Sousa marches. They work really well.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's stuff that they don't do in companies here. Those Balanchine, those ballets. So I throw some of that in, and then I'll just play this. I'll play the bass line to Thriller from Michael Jackson by Michael Jackson.
Wow.
And then just keep that bass line going.
Yes.
And then into the Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, or something like that.
Nice.
And then it's a chance to really just mix it up, isn't it?
Gosh, you guys are so creative. I just tend to improvise.
I quite like, what's the Coldplay one? Is it Viva La Vida? I hear Jerusalem bells.
Oh, yes.
Quite like that, because that'll go on for a long time. And if I'm switched on in class, which is all the time, dancers, and I've noticed, and I know we're about halfway through, this virtuosic step on this coda. When we get to about the middle of the groups, I will try and play it halfway there, Bon Jovi. Just because I had to go from F minor to G minor and have that nice big key change, stick in a glissando, because let's face it, anything goes by this point, doesn't it? Whatever you've got energy to do, you can rattle off the hemi-demi semi-quavers if you want to, or we could go a little bit slower and just play crotchets, and mix it up between the two, but anything does go.
Yeah, if it continues, it's good.
Yeah, going back to what you said, Akiko, I improvise as well.
Yeah, I
as
just
long
can't
as I get into my umchart.
Yeah, I just can't keep coming up to the tune after tune. So I might start with some sort of tune that everybody knows, and then in between I improvise, and then we'll come back to something else. But I can't just keep coming tune after tune.
I was going to ask that question. Do you have a list of your favorites that you play straight away, and then you kind of start improvising then?
I have some natural segues of things that I know are in keys that go nicely into other keys and things like that.
So if you were like a novice pianist and you were asked to play a coda, how many tunes would you have to think about having to start with so that you're comfortable knowing that you can go from one to the other for a certain amount of time?
I would say if you get 4 tunes together, maybe get 4 tunes together from 4 different genres. So you could start with something classical, or even stick 2 classical ones together. You could start with, say, your Swan Lake and your Le Corsaire coda, and then something that's a little bit more modern, maybe a pop tune, and maybe one of the marches or something like that, as we were saying earlier. And then you've got 4 that and work out how to get between the keys, and then. But then it's funny because a coda is basically anything. It doesn't really matter what the melody is. Sometimes it can be pretty much anything that's got an umchar underneath it. So as long as you've got that constant thumping of umchat, you can do everything to it.
I would suggest for a novice pianist, the good place to start is the classics.
Right.
Because the dancers would do the turns in second and the fouettes to that music they know from the ballets.
Yeah.
And the novice pianist is learning the feel of a coda that they can bring new tunes and new repertoire into that feel.
That's true.
So learning the classics is a good place to start for coda, I think. Yeah.
That's good.
Once you know the accent, you can just change to pop tunes or whatever.
Yeah. Or another good go-to, I think, for anybody for a coda is going to be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast, because it goes on forever and it changes key 3 or 4 times. And people never seem to get bored of it. I've been playing that all of my career and people still enjoy it, or they pretend that they enjoy it.
No, we love it.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, because the tune's as long as the title.
Yeah.
There's lots of little things. I tell you what else works really good on a 2/4 as well, the coda rhythm, is when teachers or ballet masters and what have you just throw in a zigzag jeté from the corner.
Yeah.
And and it's a chance for the ladies and the men to just do lovely big jetés.
Yes.
And then they're crossing after every 4 counts or whatever. And it just looks lovely in the room, and it's a nice big climax, and they just can really let loose. So that also works on that coda rhythm.
I do like a coda. And musically, just going back to what you were saying, David, earlier, what's it like to play for? We've done this big, heavy Grande Allegro, which can go on forever sometimes, as we said last week, which is physically quite demanding, especially if you've got a full company you're playing for. And the coda, all right, there's a lot of notes that you're going to play in this, and it's going to go on for a relatively long period of time, but it's not heavy. It's not light, so you can be zooming, and you're skimming up and down the piano doing these, relatively fast scales and arpeggios and things. But you're not putting weight into the piano. You're not being as physical as you are with a Grande Allegro. So your emotion and your heart is still in this, but for us, it's not as physical. So it's actually, it's easier to be more virtuosic at this coda tempo.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Yeah.
It's nice though. It's nice though when you're playing a coda and you're, like you say, it goes on for a while. So the music can just develop and develop. And then you can think of where am I going next with this tune, or what's going to pop in. I'm going to change up the rhythm. Because once you set that coda tempo and that meter, it's pretty solid. And then you can fit quite a lot into that rhythm and meter.
Are you aware of how many bars you're playing before you start changing your tunes or anything?
Well, I always look to a person that's coming into the room. I'm thinking, right, she might do 32 fouettes here, or I'm not thinking musically at this point. I'm thinking, what is the dancer doing? I'm sort of counting her fouettes or counting the turns in second, and I sort of know what in my music when the phrase is coming to an end.
Yes.
And if it's the last person, you do this, this stab chord while they pull in for 7-8 pirouettes, and then finish with them. But the coda, I'm always watching what dancers coming in and out of the center, or if anyone's going to come from the corner and do a menage. So I'm always looking, and because it's collision time as well if they're not careful. So many people doing different things. So I just have to keep my eyes open and accompany the person. And also I also have adjust the tempo.
Yes.
Because sometimes the men come in and they do like 3 pirouettes a la seconde into turns in second really, really quick. And then, they put in hops in and all sorts of things. Attitudes devant, attitudes derrière. They're putting all sorts of things in. So, there might be 3 or 4 people doing the exercise at that point. But I try and look at the person who is most rhythmical and on the music.
Yeah.
And try and, get the tempo from them generally.
What
do you think, guys?
It's very hard, if the girls are doing fouette, 3, 4 of them, one is just doing single, the other is doing double, the other one is putting a triple in between there. And then, you just have to kind of go in between, don't you?
Yeah. I think if that happens to me, I just do generic coda tempo. I'll go for something that's not going to be too fast, but that's not going to be too slow either. Because every dancer, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think every dancer does have their own natural rhythm for these things and their own natural tempo. So it's good when you're in training and things like that, be it class or school and company, to try and push that slower or faster. But they're always going to have this default go-to setting and tempo.
So when you say generic kind of like tempo, Chris, is that from experience that you know that, or?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. Or it can be the tempo that the teacher has set at the start of the exercise. So they go, we'll have a coda, Chris, at 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And then I'll stick around that. I'll adjust it slightly, but I'll stick within those parameters, really. I mean, I had a tricky situation a couple of years ago playing somewhere, and it was for an audition, and they had a group, let's say there was 40 students coming one by one from the corner, just doing PK turns, but on a coda rhythm. And they were doing, I think it was 16 from the corner and then doing something at the end, but they were coming in every 8 counts. Of course, the music was too fast or too slow. All of them. So they say, well, just watch the dancers, speed up and slow down. I was like, well, I don't know any of these dancers. I can't see. I can't read the future. And also, if I'm changing halfway through, that's going to ruin it for the people who are already doing it. I was like, you either let them do the whole exercise and stop, and then we'll have to work out what tempo we want for each dancer, or they'll just have to have a generic tempo and see how we get on with it.
Or
time got the better of us with that one, so I managed to just do a generic tempo the whole way through and therefore win the argument.
Or by the end of the class, which dancer is very musical, so you just kind of tend to adjust to this one, the musical dancers, because they would give us the better understanding of speed.
It's true. Not that we have favorite dancers in a school or a company or anything, but if you've been having a great, eye relationship with somebody, you've had decent communication through the eyes and things like that, and you've seen somebody who's dancing on your music, if they come in, your eye is instantly going to be drawn to them, and you're going to make micro adjustments in your tempo for these people because they've been the ones who've been working with you for the whole class.
It is such a benefit being a musical dancer, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's the best bit about our job.
I was going to ask you, Matt. Because as a former dancer, well, you dance as well as you play. So do you approach it in a different way then?
Well, firstly, I never dance to the level of a principal dancer. But when I'm accompanying, I'm just very, very sensitive. And I'll try and find the tune where it's up on the one, on the releve in one, and then pliés on the and. Let's say for turns in second. I'm just very sensitive. But I was going to ask you, because the virtuosic steps they're very individual because it's done by the principal dancers. And so even in the ballets, they sometimes tailor their solos and tailor their codas to put their own tricks in. And so that's going to affect the tempo when they practice it in class. Is that something that you can relate to?
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Being politically correct, yes, I do understand that it's a personal thing because it's virtuosic and you want to show off what you're good at. But there is, at some level, there needs to be a sense of discipline, that you are in tune and in tempo with the person who's playing for you or the conductor, because that's also really important, that you're able to actually gauge how long it's going to take you to do something. And if you know that this is your favorite thing to do, but it takes you a long time, then you know you've got to have to pinch some time from somewhere in order to do your thing and show off. And often that's, these days, it's something that needs to be always adhered to, really, so that you can do that. It's lovely when you get the orchestra to hold back for you, but trying to hold back 40-odd musicians is not it's not easy.
Yes. When I've got a little story on the flip side of that. I was sat in the audience of Swan Lake once, and we get to third act, the black act, as it were, and the codas happen, and the fouettes. I was so scared because they were so fast.
Oh,
wow.
And I could see the MD waving his arms like a maniac. And we all know that famous coda, don't we, from, the fouettes?
Yes.
But it was so fast. I was panicked in my seat. I remember thinking, this is so quick. And obviously that's the preference of the ballerina who was on stage.
Oh, right.
So she must have had that word with the conductor to say, this is how quick I want it. But yeah, I felt really tense and panicked in my seat until the guy's coda came in, and it sort of went back to normal tempo.
Back to normal.
I thought everybody had a train to catch.
We always used to. Well, I was going to say, we used to know when it was a Saturday night when a certain conductor would just put his head down, and you knew you had to get your skates on because it was Saturday night. We had to catch the last train.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was younger, when I was up at the company up north, which shall remain nameless, it's this generic northern company where I once worked, and some rehearsal for the ballet that we were taking back out on the road, and one of the guys came up to one of the first casts. He's like, Jesus, Chris, what's going on with you? You're really quick today. I was like, well, it's the tempo we did it last Saturday, without thinking. He just said, yes, that was last Saturday. This is Tuesday. Get a grip.
Well, listeners, that's it for another episode. And the ballet class might be over, but this series isn't. The next episode is our Q&A. This is a chance for you to ask us anything about this ballet class series, or anything you would like to ask about ballet and or music generally. We have over 6 decades of experience working in the ballet world, so hopefully we can answer your question. Also, if you want to email us any comments, we'll read them out on the podcast. We'd love to hear from you, our listeners. Our email address is balletpianopodcast@gmail.com, so please get in touch that way, or by direct messaging us on Facebook and Instagram at Ballet Piano Podcast. So we'll see you on that episode. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.